Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Forever Young, where we believe that age is just a number. I'm Dr. Sharon Mitchell. I'm one of your co hosts for the Forever Young broadcast. This is a production of Hope TV, where our executive director, producer rather, is Dr. E. Dewey Smith, and our producer is Benton Aladdin. I'd like to welcome you to another edition. We have a wonderful edition for you today. We're going to continue a conversation we had from our previous edition regarding preparation for end of life decisions. And so, before we go further, I'd like to certainly introduce my co host, the wonderful and most beautiful that we refer to her as beautiful, Miss Jean Hendricks. Jean, welcome to the show again. Can you say hello to everyone?
Yes, I can. And thanks to you, Dr. Mitchell. I'm so happy, as always, to be with you and our guest.
Thank you, Jean. As you notice, we're missing one of our dynamic trios. David Linton is not part of the program today. He'll be back with us next edition, but we certainly miss him in his absence. So I'm co-chairing the lead chair today, and I'm hoping that he'll be proud of the work that Jean and I do today. We have a wonderful guest that's going to share with us. Her name is Sherry Allen. She's an attorney. She's a founder and managing partner of Allen Law LLC, located in Atlanta, Georgia. She received her law degree from Indiana University School of Law and her Bachelor's of Arts degree from Indiana University. Attorney Allen is a trial lawyer specializing in catastrophic personal injury and military and veterans law. But the great thing she does is she spends and donates a considerable amount of her time, professional time, to Georgia Legal Services to provide access to low income and disadvantaged citizens, and is a long-standing member of the Georgia Willis Project, where she helps senior citizens with end of life and estate planning decisions. And it's this kind of work and her expertise and knowledge that we are so excited that she will be sharing with you today as a part of our audience. But before we bring Attorney Allen and all of her expertise, we always have a nugget, something that is shared by our co-host, Jean. And Jean, do you have something for us today?
Yes, I do. And these are entitled Inspirational Quotes on the Future. May these quotes inspire you to work hard and appreciate the present so that the future will be in accordance with the vision you hold within you. Abe Lincoln once said, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." Malcolm X says, "Education is a passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." The past is behind us. Learn from it. The future is ahead of us. The present is here. Now let's live it. Back to you, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Jean. And certainly that is so apropos for what we're talking about today. And so without further ado, I'd like to pass the baton on to our guest, Attorney Sherry Allen. So before we ask her some questions, Sherry, I know I didn't give justice to your total background. Can you share a little bit with us about your business and how long you've been in business, so that we can ensure that our audience is aware of what you do and how they can even get in contact with you to get services from you?
Yes, I've been a lawyer for 30 years, and
Wow.
I've been in business since 2003 in private practice. I'm a trial lawyer, and I also represent disabled veterans and disabled civilians who apply for Social Security. I litigate cases like medical malpractice. I litigate cases of nursing home negligence, helping seniors who are victimized in nursing home situations. I also represent people who have had catastrophic injuries, trucking accidents, auto accidents. One of the things that I enjoy doing and have always liked doing is helping people of modest means and of low income means to get access to justice. It is very important to me that people understand what the laws are and are able to avail themselves of those laws. I can be reached at sherry@sherryallenlaw.com by email, or you can call the office 404-474-4242, especially if you have more questions. after today with regard to end-of-life planning, feel free to call me.
Thank you, Sherry. Jean, you can go ahead with your question.
Okay, Sherry, tell us, what would you like for us to know about your business? What would you like for us to know about your business?
Well, I would like you to know, first and foremost, I am a Christian attorney, and I walk the talk. I also am a compassionate, caring attorney who cares about what's happening in someone's family. I've spent time going to see about clients, getting things for their children, speaking at schools, things like that, because I think it is very important to be hands-on and try to actually take care of people. If someone calls me, they're going to get to speak to me. They're not going to just speak to my staff only. They will get to speak to a lawyer. And I think that's really important, because I get a lot of people who sometimes call and say, I never got to speak to anyone other than a secretary or the receptionist. I could never get to speak to my lawyer. You will get to speak to your lawyer if you call me.
Very good.
Wow.
Thank you.
That is really big. I tell you,
Yes,
that's
that
very
is.
important. Yes.
Very good.
So Sherry, we're going to bounce a little bit to the end of life conversation. You shared a little bit with us in the first segment last week. So we'd like to pick up from that conversation. Can you tell us, how does one prepare end of life planning documents, and what is that exactly included in those documents?
Okay. What's included in end-of-life documents, when we usually talk about that, is having together your personal and financial records, your advanced healthcare directive, your last will and testament, instructions about your funeral and burial plans, how do you want things to go, and a power of attorney, your financial power of attorney. If something should happen to you and you cannot speak on your own behalf or handle your financial affairs, you want to make sure there's already something in place there. Now, let me give you a caveat about a power of attorney in Georgia. You want in the language of your power of attorney to say it has to be triggered by a physician, meaning because power of attorney documents can be effective once you sign them. Once they're signed and notarized, they can be effective then. If you do not have the language that says you have to be incapacitated and a physician has to attest that you are no longer able to act on your own behalf, someone can open financial documents and things like that in your name now once you sign for a power of attorney. So it is very important that your power of attorney include the physician triggering language.
Does that apply to people with mental incapacitation, like people with Alzheimer's or dementia as well? That would cover that.
If they've had a power of attorney signed prior to that, that's exactly what happens. I can say from a personal standpoint, I had a family member who suddenly became ill and became incapacitated. And that person, the family member, had to go to court because although she was married to him, she did not have his power of attorney and he had his own business. So she could not act with regard to his financial affairs, although she was his wife. So she had to go to court to have the court give her conservatorship over her own husband. But if there had been a power of attorney document in place, it would have automatically passed that once he was incapacitated, she could act on his own behalf and deal with the banking information and all of that. And because it takes a while sometimes to get into court, it was a bit of a long process for her before she had access to any of the money, before she could deal with paying their house notes, things like that. It was really tough because there was no power of attorney in place already.
Meet the Scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you. but I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
You had this epiphany based on what your grandmother had done. Saved money for 6 months, paid off debt, slept on the floor. And because of this conversion moment, you literally are sitting on the board of a bank that wouldn't have even given you a loan.
I was a pastor of a church. I was spending so much money dressing like a preacher, driving preacher cars. If I'm spirit filled, the same Holy Ghost that makes me shout can make me wait until I can afford a BMW, and stop giving money, donating money to big banks, paying them 18% interest for the right to use their credit card to buy something I can't afford. It's a mentality.
With COVID-19 being such a traumatic experience for so many people, and a lot of people weren't even thinking, I'm sure, about, oh, well, I need to prepare a will or get myself ready. How has that affected have you seen more people now trying to do wills and estate planning now that we've gone through it, are still going through the COVID-19 phase of our lives?
I've seen a lot more people trying to do that, to have wills, to have healthcare directives, to even to the point of having living trust. Because what the living trust does, it means your assets don't go through probate at all. It saves your family money and times. But living trusts are usually documents that you really need a lawyer generally for. But it also keeps your information private. For example, a will goes through probate, so it's public knowledge. But trusts are not public knowledge, so trusts stay private, and trusts survive your death. A will is only activated when you die, but a trust that you set up now is still in process and still in effect after you die. Long-term care is the other thing that I'm also seeing people start to buy long-term care insurance and ask more about long-term care and what should happen if I'm ill for a while. So I've seen an uptick in people getting long-term care insurance, and I've talked to colleagues of mine, and that's what they're saying that they're seeing too. All of those things since COVID, because so you can think you're invincible until something like that affects the whole world. And then there's been so many people ill or who did not survive it that families are really starting to take a hard look at, what if I'm incapacitated? Or what if I get ill and I don't make it?
Let me ask you one additional question in reference to that one. Most people have heard of wills. Some people don't know what a trust is. Can you tell us who or what type of person would need a trust?
Living trusts are where that's really something with regard to your financial assets. And that's what living trusts are concerned with. That's what a trust is about. You're putting this particular property, whether it's money, it can be, some people put their houses in non-revocable living trusts, things like that. You're putting it in the property in now, and then you're already making determinations as to how it will pass if you are not the one, if you're no longer around. You're making determinations now about how it will pass. There's revocable and non-revocable living trusts. So a person can have a living trust and they can be the trustee during their life, and then they can have a successor trustee set up so that if they're incapacitated or if they die, that is the person who then is still handling that trust. And that's what stays private. Like whatever's in your living trust, it doesn't mean everyone has to know about it, but it can still be managed beyond the grave.
Right. Okay.
But
so
it's finances.
Okay, so if I don't have but $100, I don't need to worry about a trust, right?
No. No.
Thank you.
That is
Thank
true.
you.
So property appears to be, we hear people talk about, well, as African Americans, we never think of trust because as Jean has said so hilariously, if you don't have assets, You typically don't think that you need a trust. But
Right.
if you own a house, would that be something that you say that someone needs to set up a trust since they own a home?
You
Who,
you can set
if,
you can set up a trust if you own a home. Um, and
okay.
sometimes what people do, they want somebody to live in the home during that person's lifetime, but then they want it to pass on to someone else when that person dies. You can make that kind of provision in a trust so that you're making sure that the house is still going to be there. You know, the taxes are going to still be
Mm-hmm.
paid, and somebody's going to still do the
Okay.
maintenance and things on the house. And so let's say if someone is saying, well, I want my wife to have the house when I'm gone. There's a certain percentage in the will that she'll have of the property anyway, but I want her to have this when I'm gone, but I want my children to have the remainder.
Mm-hmm.
So you're giving someone a life
Mm-hmm.
estate now, but you're giving a remainder to someone else. That's something that you can set up in a trust to happen that way. So that means that person who has the life estate, they don't have any rights to sell it because all they have it is the title while they are alive.
Okay. So now the
Very
will
good.
would designate who they wanted to have all together. Is that the difference?
I didn't. Can you say the question? Something you broke
Say
up.
that again.
Okay, you missed some
I
part.
didn't. I
That's
didn't
okay.
get the question.
Okay. I think I'm freezing a bit. Can you hear me now, Sherry?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Hey, Jean, go ahead. Hey, Jean, you can pick up the next question.
Okay. Can you tell us or
Hey, Jean, you
discuss
can
the
answer
last?
next.
Okay. Can you discuss the last will and testament and what it includes? If this is a substitution for a living will or a living trust? Did you hear me?
The last will and testament is when you die. That's how that goes through. That either goes through probate when you die. That's what the last will and testament is. You can, in that last will and testament, what it can include is how you want property to pass, your personal property, your real property, how you want children provided for, what you want with regard to your burial and funeral plan can be there as well, how you want your remains treated. You can put that all there in that will as well. A trust can be part of your last will and testament.
Okay.
So it can be one document. You don't have to have several, but it can be part of that. You can have a trust in there as well. You can have a living trust that's separate, and that, like I said, a living trust you can set up separately. But that is something where I say people really need a lawyer for, because what a lot of lawyers will say, and what we have problems with, is people actually putting the property into the trust, because that's what the trust is actually overseeing some property, and that property has to be transferred into there.
Okay. That's kind of what I was inquiring about earlier, was the difference of the will. Does that designate who you want to have respective items that you leave as part of your estate? The will is the difference.
Yes.
In that. Okay.
Yes, it is. And I can give the audience an easy way to do it. Let's say, you've seen binders that students have, and that they have pockets in them. Well, let's say you have like a pocket binder. Your will in the front part of the binder, the pictures, you take pictures and put that person's name in the last part of the binder, and you can refer to that in your will. You can say, let's say it's going to be section A. You can say, I want the people to get the items that are listed in section A, these people, and these items are X. Or you can say they're in the binder. And in the binder, you have the pictures, because it really is tough to go through a house and write down everything in everybody's name, but it's easier to take a picture.
Okay.
But that's
Very
where you
good.
tell what you want people to have. And then you're expecting your executor to make sure that they get those items.
You had this epiphany based on what your grandmother had done. Saved money for 6 months, paid off debt, slept on the floor, And because of this conversion moment, you literally are sitting on the board of a bank that wouldn't have even given you a loan.
I was a pastor of a church. I was spending so much money dressing like a preacher, driving preacher cars. If I'm spirit filled, the same Holy Ghost that makes me shout can make me wait until I can afford a BMW and stop giving money, donating money to big banks, paying them 18% interest for the right to use their credit card to buy something I can't afford. It's a mentality.
So now, Sherry, what happens to my estate if there is no will or a trust written?
I have to say, unfortunately, that's what I'm finding a lot with African American people. That we don't have a will. And you'd be surprised at people who you would think would have all of their affairs together that have everything else so together, but they do not put everything into a will. So here's what happens. In Georgia, if you have children but no spouse, then your children split everything. And that's biological and adopted children. If you have a spouse and one child, they divide it equally. Let's say you have a spouse but more than one child, your spouse will get for sure 1/3. And then the children have to split the rest of the estate equally. If there's no spouse, no living children, then it passes down through your grandchildren. And then the grandchildren split the person's estate. And that's how it goes. The difficulty sometimes is, let's say when people don't have a will, there's no one designated to handle things. You may have a family member who's not doing everything above board. They may come in and take some of the most precious things or most costly things. And then no one knows what was there, what wasn't there. And then they're trying to figure out how to split things up. And unfortunately, there's items that, there's funerals to be provided for and things like that it really does help if you are already doing that prior to being ill or incapacitated. If you all don't mind, I can give a personal example of my mother. I remember my mother, she called me when she was still alive, she called me, and I lived in another city at the time, another state. She called me one Saturday and said, I want you to come and visit. I have an appointment I need to go to. She didn't tell me what it was. I get there and I think, we're just going to go see some friends or something. And she says, well, I want you to go with me to the funeral home. And I'm thinking, are you ill? Do you know? She said, oh, no, I'm perfectly fine. But we went there. She picked everything out. She gave me and gave him what her life insurance policy, all of that, had a copy. We took a copy there. When she did pass away, all I had to do was walk in there. He had it all. She had done it all. I didn't have to worry about whether or not this is what she wanted because she had done it. And she did it when she was well. She did it when she wasn't sick. There was nothing wrong. We ended up going to lunch afterwards. Wow. It was a fine day. But it's really tough when you're thinking mama or daddy may not be here. And now we're trying to figure all this out. So it's better to do it when you're able-bodied, you're feeling well, and you can plan it out. You can talk to your family about it.
Right. That's
Wow.
good. That's good. Your mother's a smart woman.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Well, it made my father do it. They were not even married anymore, but my father did the same thing, and we were thankful. I can tell you, 5 kids, we were all thankful. All we had to do was
Right.
show up. He picked the same place. We showed up. They had it all done. And I thought, now
That's
that's
it.
the way to leave it for children.
That's right. It is. It is.
Yes.
And even and added to that, also, speaking from personal experience, it's also good to go ahead and whatever the cost is going to be, pay for it then, because the person I'm talking about, I mean, they paid maybe 15 years ago, and there was no increase in price because we already
Right.
paid for it. Yes.
That's
Right.
very true. That's very
Right.
true.
Right. Uh-huh. Now, one other question: how has
Mhm.
COVID-19 affected how you provide services to families facing the end of life decisions?
Mhm.
How has COVID-19?
I do a lot of talking to them about it. I do a lot.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, with COVID-19, I do a lot of praying with families and people calling me and telling me
Wow.
that someone's ill or
Mhm.
they think they may not make it. I've had to do a lot of that too. So I've done a
Mhm.
lawyer part, but I've also just done, to me, what was a spiritual part, trying to talk people
Right.
through.
That's
And
good.
sometimes it's just talking to them about faith and believing that God can still
Yes.
heal and get them through something.
Mm-hmm.
That is how my business has changed. When before I would just have my lawyer hat on, and now I don't just
Right.
have a
Right.
legal hat on. I try to make sure that
Mhm.
I'm really listening and hearing what, and sometimes praying, saying, God, how do I talk to this person? Because I notice in my own business, even when it's not COVID-19, when it's not end of life, I'm a lot more sensitive to what someone's plight is. And I thought I was caring before, but I'm a lot more caring now, because I don't know if I'm the last voice or if they're going to be
Right.
fine or where they are emotionally.
Mhm.
Because even with COVID, there's a lot of people who've ended their own lives during COVID.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Sherry,
Very good.
that's really good, which makes a difference of having a Christian attorney than
Right.
someone that's just
Right.
conducting business for you, because you can talk about faith, you can talk about enduring, and all those things that are spiritual related as well. I did want to ask you, when you were talking about the estates themselves, when you talk about an estate, does the estate have to pay any debtors before the recipients can receive
Absolutely.
proceeds from? Okay. So how does
Absolutely.
that work then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's and the executor is required to make sure that happens. So the executor is required. Now, you can designate that the executor is going to do it. You can designate
Okay.
in your will that the trustee is responsible to make sure it happens. But the court is going to expect that you have to give a notice to creditors. So you have to publish that this person has died, that you have to publish where they're supposed to file. It's all published in public record. And they have so many days that they have to make sure that they have filed their claims. And those claims get paid before any of the assets. So let's say there's personal property. It may be you have to sell something in order to make sure that claim is paid. A lot of times people have had outstanding hospital and medical bills because they've been ill prior to their passing. And although the estate has this money, the creditors have to get paid.
Wow. That's why
Even
I asked that question. Go ahead, Jean.
Even if, yeah, no, I was going to say, if you have credit and that this bill is not completely paid, you're saying that even though you're gone on, your whoever is in charge of your will or your estate, they have to pay that debt.
Because think about this. This is money in your estate. This is not their money. This is your money. And if there are sufficient assets in the estate to take care of that. Now, I can tell you this, a lot of times I have been an executor. So I have had to negotiate and say, well, there's not that much money there. And I've had also creditors say, well, we'll just let it go. But most of the time they're putting their claim in. And the court, you have to give an accounting to the court. As an executor, you're giving an accounting to the court as to what got paid, and the claims go into the court. They're not going just to you. They're going into the court. So the court is seeing that these are the claims from these creditors.
Wow.
People can have their whole estate held up too. There can even be a personal injury matter that holds up your estate. Let's say the person died, but they had committed some kind of a negligent act or something against someone else. They can get that money out of your estate.
Wow.
I tell you, Sherry, you have truly educated us today. And unfortunately, we are out of time. So Sherry, I'd like you to certainly, in closing, give us a piece of what you would like to leave with our audience, because we are going to close out, because I'm getting the alerts from our associate producer that it's time for us to wrap up. And for those of you who just tuned in, this is Forever Young, a program of Hope TV. So Sherry, if you'll wrap up for us, what message would you like to leave with our audience at this time?
The message that I would like to leave is, do not put off that end of life conversation. And for people who want to be proactive, especially with regard to putting passwords, things like that down so their family members can get into their computers to find out where things are, there is a book by a lady called Thelma Hall, who works a lot in church bereavement ministry, and it's called A Beacon of Life on Grief. And it kind of is a workbook for you to use to put information down so your family can just get that book when you pass away. And they'll know what your passwords are, where your things are, where your will is. And so it has all of these things in there that need to be handled, that a lot of times when you come to the church or the funeral home, they have no idea. But she's kind of put together what you need to do. And so that's what I would like to leave with the audience. Don't put off that conversation habit now. Get those documents.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you so much.
Well, again, on behalf of our team, yes, we'd like to say thank you. This was a great segment. And again, we'd like to say till next time, from Gene Hendricks, David Linton, and I, this is Dr. Sharon Mitchell. We'd like to say goodbye for this segment. And don't forget, age ain't nothing but a number, because we are forever young. See you next time.